Shalom, shalom. First, we want to start off by giving all honor, praises, and infinite glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors unto the elders, apostles, and bishops, the GMS Great Millstone, who rule well, teach and edify, and peace and blessings. To you, sincere Akim, and Aqua in this household of faith. My name is Yeshaya from the GMS Arizona Church, and doing the video, man, going into the chat, man. And I asked the chat, I said, in the 1970 oil crisis, how did the globe manage the energy shortage? Because as we know to date, prior to the Strait of Hormuz, and the war that's going on right now with that, the biggest oil energy crisis happened in 1997. This is the OPEC oil embargo forced countries to quickly, because oil supplies dropped and prices surged. And a thing that's convenient about this, man, is how that they managed. How did they manage to preserve energy? How did they manage to reroute, focus on different, societal norms? All right, and as we know in his faith, man, there's going to be 15-minute cities coming around. There's going to be an energy shortage, man. We can expect blackouts. Okay, we can expect Esau to be rationing oil so that people can't go as far. And I believe in a country, Sri Lanka, they already started doing oil rationing. I might have to look back into that, but just for an example, you get 3 gallons of oil per week, for your car fuel. And that's not even including your house, your energy that it takes to fuel up your house. But that's just for your car. And most economy cars, at a consistent best, they can make up to 30 miles a gallon. Most people don't even have a vehicle like that. So what is that gonna entail? You can go up to anywhere between 50 to 90 miles a week. That's a 15-minute city right there, man. For a full week, you have to do that. Or, that pushes people to a more technological route. And that's what these devils are pushing a lot, is the electric cars, man. These microwave cars. Your Teslas. They're really even moving away from those hybrid engines, to be honest. You got your Teslas, your Lucids. And every brand is coming out with a new electric option. They're pushing that electric prerogative, because ultimately, man, when all this shit comes crashing down, they don't want people to be able to so easily pick up and go. Okay, when all this shit crashes down, they want an electric car where through a satellite you could just turn that motherfucker off in its track, But this is gasoline rationing. And this is what they have done already. This is what they did in 1970. It says gasoline rationing, odd even license plate system in the United States. Lower speed limits, reduced heating and lighting in public spaces, car-free days in parts of Europe. Parts of Europe where you can't even use the whip. And it says people drove less, carpooled more, and shifted daily habits because a lot of, these people are goyim. They just, this door's closed, you can't go through the door. Okay. That bench is restricted. You can't sit on the bench. Okay, whatever. That's these people, man. But it says government heavily promoted energy-saving campaigns. It says medium-term adjustments. It says, once the shock settled, countries tried to stabilize supply by diversifying oil sources, increase production outside the Middle East, strategic reserves. The U.S. created a strategic petroleum reserve to store oil for the future crises. Economic shifts, industries became more efficient to cut costs. So you can see that even on a capitalist standpoint, how all the world, even shifts. So it's only a matter of time before this whole world shifts to that beast system, man. It's already happening now. It's only a matter of time before they all take upon that, taken in fullness. I believe it was one of the Asian countries that already rolled out Neuralinks, man. People out there taking the MOTB already, man. These people were just willingly taking it. But it says, It says energy efficient improvements. Car became much more fuel efficient. That's what they're doing again with the electric cars. It says appliances and buildings improved energy use. Because ultimately, man, they're going to tech hack everything. It says expansion of nuclear power in countries like France, solar, shift towards coal, natural gases, and nuclear energy. Policy changes to avoid reliance on a single region. So, these devils made a lot of shifts in 1970, on a global standpoint. And even then, ever since that energy crisis, the oil doesn't go back. Okay, it only keeps getting higher and higher because people are using it more and more. And when you see that thing about the reserves, those reserves aren't for the average American. Those reserves are to maintain the military, to maintain Esau, Edom, and what they need. Okay, when you got the military putting in reserves, they're not putting in these reserves for the sake that Americans can live a happy life. They got to upkeep a fucking military too, man. It says, and then I put in, before we about to get into some scriptures, but I put in one more question. It says, percentage-wise, answer only. How much more do we consume now? And it said 200 to 250% increase in global oil consumption since the 1973 oil crisis. So now we consume 2 times the amount as that crisis. And you've seen the great effects on that. That means that this time, even the way that they manage it is going to be even more extreme. How it said, car-free days in parts of Europe. It's going to be it's going to be like that all over the globe, based on how intense this is going to get. And the average American, man, they're getting so shut down and poor that they're not going to be able to upkeep paying these gas prices regardless, man. They're not going to be able to pay $10, $15 a gallon, man. They're not going to be able to pay that and keep moving around. People, you're gonna be seeing a lot of these fat asses get real fit because motherfuckers gonna be walking. Okay. Anyways, let's get Revelation 12 and verse 12. Because ultimately, man, this is a part of that wrath, man. This is part of that clampdown. These devils know what they're doing. That's why the scriptures say, Lord, preserve me from the crafty, the crafty counsel of the wicked. These devils are just constantly thinking and scheming. And for sure that they don't let any crisis go to waste. You've seen the effects of 2001 with the 911, and how they clamped down the entire airport system and had, a lot more tracking on that. What do you think they're going to do now when energy crisis is? And then you're going to have a lot of, as the war intensifies, you're going to have a lot of vengeful spirits that are going to wake up. And now they're going to start cracking down on everybody. They're cracking down everything, man. There's Revelation 12 and verse 12. It says, therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil has come down into you having great wrath, because he knoweth that he had but a short time. There's going to be a financial crackdown. There's going to be a break. You got Neuro that's up in a high seat right now, just lying for the sake of mending the economy to that which this devil wants it to be. Trump is doing a damn good job in the office that he's doing on the left-hand side. These devils are truly, what the Bible speaks of. Deceivers. Truly those that are fashioned against the Lord. Because with this energy crisis going down, and that Strait of Hormuz being closed, we have a famine that is upon the horizon. Okay? And we got to get Sirach 36. There's a famine on the horizon as well, man. The United States isn't yielding a good harvest this year. But Sirach, I think it's 36. It might be 37. Hold up. Bear with me for 1 second. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look it up. Sirach 39. All right, so Sirach chapter 39 and verse 25, it says, For the good are good things created from the beginning, so evil things for sinners. You know, and that's what's going to come upon, you know, these spirits of vengeance, these spirits of hunger, these spirits of pain are going to come upon, you know, all those who aren't, you know, ultimately of Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai, man. You know, there's going to be a great catastrophe happening in this place. You know, when you're considering that, you know, we consume 2 times the amount that we used to consume in 1970, you know, which I believe, you know, that we actually consume more, probably three times the amount, you know, that we do in 1970. You know, you could only imagine the type of the distress and the crackdown that's going to be on these people. It says the principal things for the whole use of man's life are water, iron, and salt, flour of wheat, honey, milk, the blood of grape, and oil and clothing. So considering all these things, you know, these Babylonians, man, these Americans have access and free reign to just about every resource that they could ever want. These people have grown accustomed to a full tank of gas. These people have grown accustomed to a full belly. These people have grown accustomed to accessible water and freedom to do that which they will. You know, these people think that, you know, America, Babylon the Great is basically heaven, because you can do whatever the hell you want here. You know, and you know, it's about to come to a screeching halt, man. You know, it's about to be like right before a major car crash, those tire skirts, because they're not going to be able to do those things. It says all these things are for good to the godly, so to the sinner they are turned into evil. And you already know this devil being greedy, this devil being lascivious, this devil, you know, ultimately planning to crack down on the elect and also, you know, be cruel. He's not going to share any of the reserved resources that they have once it comes down to the nick of things. Back in 1 Kings, the 6th chapter, 1 Kings, the 6th chapter went into, you know, if the Lord didn't feed you, or the Lord didn't supply you, then what can I do? You know, how the scriptures talk about how a mule's head was sold, you know, for a very hefty amount. You know, it's only a matter of time before, you know, that spirit is going to come upon here. And this is verse 28. It says, there be spirits that are created for vengeance, which in their fury lay on sore strokes. I have to read that again. It says, there be spirits that are created for vengeance, which in their fury lay on sore strokes. In the time of destruction, they pour out their force and appease the wrath of him that made them. And ultimately, the Lord, which ruleth in the kingdom of man, is going to send that spirit out, man. And it's going to come upon this whole face of the earth. And we can be sure to expect, you know, a major energy crisis, man. And these devils are going to usher in those 15-minute cities. They're going to usher in ultimately the RFID microchip, which is the mark of the beast that the scriptures speak of in Revelation, the 13th chapter. Okay, we are on the precipice of the break of this thing. I pray this lesson was edifying. I want to last give all honor, praise, and infinite glory to Yahweh, B'Shem Yahushua, B'Shem Kakodash, Shalom.